Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, your favorite automotive show where we talk about the issues that affect the customer experience at your stores. Whether it's the front of the store, the back of the store, or somewhere in the middle, doesn't really matter. Because if they love what you do, you'll help the industry, for one, change the perception of the dealership. But most importantly, they'll come back to you for everything they need when they need it. And they'll bring their entire tribe, their family, their coworkers, friends, everybody that's in their orbit. So this week, as most weeks, we bring content that you can use in your stores every day. I'm very fortunate. I have a great network of friends and colleagues that come on here 2-3 times a month to share with us what they do or what they've done to help you in stores. Real actionable items that you can use tomorrow in your stores. And this week we continue in our leadership series with my good friend Joe Clementi. We're going to do these about once a month, right, Joe?
Yep, once a month.
So our goal is to bring value to you and help you understand some of the concepts that most people really aren't talking about. So Joe, welcome, man.
Hey, Paul, thanks for having me again. I just get blood blowing through my veins. Like, this is just the best moment of time where we get to contribute to your audience, your share of people, and really just expand the content that I know tonight is going to add a tremendous amount of value.
I'm excited, man. I live for this stuff. I'm in Michigan right now. My day started at 2:30 a.m., 6 a.m. flight. Those are always challenging. And then the first flight was delayed, so I had to literally run to catch my second flight. I even got the text from the airline that says that, do you want to rebook because you might miss your connection? But I'm not missing my connection if there's anything I can do. So, Joe, for a couple of new folks that may tune in tonight or on the replay, why don't you give us a brief history of your background and how you got to this point, and then we'll jump right in, man.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. My name is Joe Clementi. I go by Coach Joe. My title is I'm the Executive Vice President for Traver Connect. We are the industry well-recognized business development center. And I'm also the creator of our product for learning and development called Experience Moves, which you're going to get a little bit of a snapshot today on one of the topics we cover in detail. And we're going to deliver value-added content. So not only will you maybe be taking notes, but you might actually pick 1 or 2 items up that are actionable today. So I'm excited. I think we bring a lot of framework that's going to add value in the automotive world, but even a little bit beyond that environment. So thanks for having me, Paul. I'm super excited.
Awesome, Joe. All right, so in the LinkedIn thread or in the LinkedIn post, we put the content of the show tonight. And we'll go through this as with all of our shows. Sometimes we get through all of it. Sometimes we get through most of it. All depends on how deep the conversation gets. But we'd like to get through most of it. And then in the thread, Joe, after the show, I'd like you to put links to your program so that folks that want to reach out to you have an easy way to do so. They can just click and connect with you and take it further offline.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Paul. And the easiest way is through LinkedIn under Joseph Clementi. So thank you. We'll be happy to add that link in there as well.
Excellent. So the title of our show is The Leadership Compression Curve, Why Good Leaders Get Stuck and How to Push Through. So to kick this off, Joe, let me ask you a question, man. Why do so many leaders hit a ceiling?
So I think we have to start with something really simple, but very true. Paul, have you ever ended a week completely drained, yet realized you haven't actually moved further ahead? I know I have, and I'm sure there are many leaders out there that have felt the same way. We call that the hamster wheel of leadership. Busy? Yep. Productive? Maybe. Transformative? Not even close. Leadership isn't about motion, it's momentum. It isn't about speed, but it's more about direction. There's a question everyone always says, but I'm working hard. Am I working hard enough? Listen, effort is the cost of admission. Practice is what earns you a seat at the table. especially at the next level. So when we think about a leader running on that busy wheel, it just burns energy. Being a leader, climbing the trail builds your capacity. And that's what tonight's show is really about. It's understanding the curve that every leader eventually faces and how to go beyond that. So let's take for a moment the question you asked, why do leaders hit a ceiling? I think leaders don't stall because they're unmotivated. They're very motivated, right? They're inspired to create or driven to create. They stall because they max out the tools that got them there. That's the ceiling. That invisible line where competence becomes a constraint. So I want to use a teaching moment here, and many of you have heard this before. Maybe you have as well. It's called the Peter Principle. It explains this way: people rise to their level of incompetence, not because they lack talent, but because the skills that worked yesterday cannot solve tomorrow's challenge. You and I spoke a little bit pre-show about AI and the scarcity and the fear that it's creating, and that bridge that's necessary between leaders and the technology. That's a gap that I think we can identify. So let me give you an example, right? I try to use real stories. A top performing manager, great in the service drive, really loves it what they're doing, and they get promoted. But leadership requires something very different. It requires developing them. And when that shift doesn't happen, that progress stops, Paul. So every leader reaches a point where effort stops scaling. Let me say that again. Every leader reaches a point where effort stops scaling. The next level isn't about doing more, but it's about becoming and learning more. This ceiling that I just mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
it isn't where you stop growing. It is, though, where your old playbook stops working. And that's why most leaders get stuck and where they hit that ceiling.
Now, according to Harvard Business Review reports, 50 to 70% of executives fail within 18 months of taking on a new role, often due to inability to adapt or grow beyond their previous leadership approach.
Imagine that. So we get to a certain point where our skills got us here, but we have no other tools to get us beyond the existing playbook. So I'm going to just throw in a brief analogy. There's a great book by Jim Collins. Actually, he's a great author and probably one of the greatest thinkers that I know in terms of leadership. He wrote Good to Great, Built to Last, Beyond Entrepreneurship. He studied the difference between companies that thrive and those that fade away. And he discovered a trap that most leaders fall into. And I'll try to explain it using his analogy.
Yeah.
Profit or people, performance or purpose, structure or flexibility. Those are all false choices. Great leaders don't choose, they integrate, right? They live in what Jim Collins called the genius of the genius of and. It's not balanced, it's tension held with intention. He said, or keeps you small and makes you expansive. I want to just add a reflection moment for those that may be taking some notes. When you're forcing into a choice, it's actually giving you an opportunity to integrate and. Because leadership maturation happens. It lives in those tension moments that allows you to expand. And we're going to add some science later, Paul, as I always do, because that's the framework of why this is so important.
Now, I just want to mention something. Someone in the thread put a link. Oh, it's a GoFundMe. Yeah, we don't do those. I'll have to remove that afterwards. So do me a favor. Do not click on the link that's in that thread. at the beginning here. We do not do GoFundMe's on this show, and I don't believe I'm connected to this person. So please disregard that. I just want to welcome Michael Larkin. Says, good evening, gents. Great topic tonight. And as always, my good friend from Sugar Land, Texas, Kenneth Dunner Jr., the proclaimed nicest person on LinkedIn that I know.
That's awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for attending.
Savor the flavor of the awesomeness in you, Paul Meijer. But thank you. What was I going to ask you here? Autopilot.
Yeah, autopilot.
It's the Ronco rotisserie method, right? Just kind of set it, forget it, and everything is going to work out by itself. And fun fact, I actually bought a Ronco rotisserie and I returned it.
So autopilot feels safe, right? It does. It's where I'm most comfortable, but it's silent decay. When you stop practicing, you start rehearsing just mediocrity. You become that maximum playbook that you're working from. Let me share a couple of points about where autopilot stems. Autopilot looks like spreadsheets without direction, reports without any reflection or coaching, leaders that chase performance metrics instead of developing their people and teaching them the byproduct of those performance metrics.
There you go.
So let me add a piece of science. Neuroscience tells us that the brain prunes what it doesn't use. So when you stop having real conversations, you lose the ability to lead them. As a manager, as a leader, when you stop having conversations that are structured, you lose the ability to lead those conversations. When we are stuck on autopilot, it just keeps things moving, but it doesn't create any growth.
It basically runs into stagnation, right?
Yeah, it stops the growth, right? It stalls at that level, that ceiling that we talked about, and we can't figure out how to break through, yet we begin the same pattern repeatedly. So for example, let me just use a real life. We sold 180 cars. Our goal was 300. Why didn't we sell 300? Well, let's go get 300 next month. And we haven't built a strategy or a plan to develop our people that delivers on the byproduct. So I'm going to ask everybody in the audience just a simple question. Ask yourself this: what part of your leadership is running on habit instead of intention? When we change the question, the outcome changes with it.
Do you think people are able to spot, able to spot in themselves, or do you spot in yourself when you're on autopilot?
So I'm glad you brought that up. Autopilot is like our blind spots. And where we need someone to share with us as our blind spots is someone giving us reflection. Someone who can stop and say, have you thought about? But we're stuck in this wheel, this hamster wheel, working really hard because we're living in this moment. We don't stop and ask, what am I doing wrong? Or where am I stuck on this hamster wheel? You change that question, you flip it around a little bit, and you learn to be intentional. You start seeing your own blind spots. For me, I have a professional coach. And what I would recommend for most people is that they lean on someone beyond their supervisor, owner, dealer, general manager, whatever role it is, looking at a financial statement and seeing where that potential lies and where the capability lies. Because oftentimes we get it, we want it, we have capacity, but we don't know how to use that capacity to deliver a result.
Now, I want to just jump on something that you said there, okay? The coach has a coach, right? I think a lot of people are afraid of something like that. But they fail to realize that some of the greatest sport, and I'm not a sports person, but some of the greatest sports athletes all have coaches, right?
Absolutely. You know, and you think about, I don't know if you've had a chance to read Brene Brown's newest book. It's called Strong Ground. I have it on my desktop. But here's a professor that teaches, that works with Fortune 500 companies, and her and Adam Grant, by the way, and they talk about the importance of a leader having their own coach, having someone. She says in the book, and I'll paraphrase, so for those of you that may want to read it, is she talks about the necessity for professionals to have a coach that go beyond the day-to-day performance standards. Because remember, working hard, that's the cost of entry.
Right.
But I think we have to go a little deeper for everybody, Paul. I think we got to define what is compression. And if you'll bear with me a moment, I'd like to use an analogy or a story, if you will. Let's talk about the curve itself. So I want you to picture, because you're a car guy, you'll get this. Picture an engine. When it's new, the piston glides through the cylinder with perfect precision. Clean oil, right? Smooth motion. Yep. Every stroke produces effortless power. The system is well balanced. Pressure creates performance. But what happens over time? Residue builds, right? Carbon deposits. The cylinder walls start to maybe corrode, or they become coated.
Get a ridge on top.
Yeah. So picture that same piston being forced through that clogged chamber, still expected to deliver the same level of performance. The harder it's driven, the more resistance it meets. Friction replaces flow. Now, what happens? Heat replaces that power, right? And eventually, it doesn't just slow. What happens? It seizes, right?
Yeah.
That's the science. It just freezes. That's compression in a leadership format. When we keep forcing old processes through a corroded system, when we rely on the same thinking that got us here, the same level of habits, and the same methods that worked before, we grind them against the very structure that used to create momentum and movement. And it no longer gets us beyond that.
So what's interesting then is that, you know, I'm a very process-driven person. Okay, I believe in process. But this goes beyond the process, because if we get stuck on the process wheel and we're not continually evolving and growing in our thought process as to how to improve that, a process is good, but the process has to continually evolve in order to make gains and not
get
us into depression.
Yes, 100%. So if you think about it this way, the friction you feel in that process isn't failure, it's feedback. It's telling you something. And if your system is telling you the pressure is exceeding its current capacity, that cylinder you built is getting warped, right? So process gets warped, it gets frayed, outdated, not followed any longer. Let's take this a little bit further, because I think compression in leadership is the pressure between what your role demands every day and what your current capacity can carry. That's why I feel that learning and development brings in another layer to expand the current playbook. Let me use another analogy along the same line. My wife is a teacher. So in education, teachers have a teacher day where they go off-site. My wife just came back from one, and they learn new methods, new strategies. They have curriculum coaches. They have behavior coaches. I could go down the line. Yet they are learning how to evolve in this new classroom. Listen, Paul, the environment you and I were in, we might have listened to an hour lecture. In today's environment, those students won't stay still for an hour lecture. So you have to learn how to devolve your experience for that student. And I believe this in leadership, we need that same recalibration. Someone who's going to help us evolve when the curve changes direction. And again, I'll say it a third time, and that playbook, that old playbook, no longer applies. That's where learning and development comes in. Because just like that piston, if you don't clean up the buildup, you're going to lose power, right?
Yeah.
All at one time. You burn it a little bit a day, but you're going to lose power eventually. It's going to stop, right?
You know what's so mind-blowing about this whole concept that we just went through here is that I'm in store every day, and as you are, and to your point of somebody won't sit for a certain period of time. Okay, I've been in meetings. You know, you get a dealer principal to sit in a meeting for 3 hours. That's stronger than garlic. But you're right, they can't sit because I've had some get up, go get a can of soda, walk around the room while we're having the meeting and contributing. Now, where this just gave me a shot of 220 volts is we have leadership in stores that they struggle with process, okay? Now, if they struggle with process, they're not even getting beyond that piece, which is the piece that you just talked about now, which is the piece that prevents or cuts down on the compression, which is a limiting force on their business. Wow.
Yeah, and you just had a very key statement, because compression doesn't just drain energy. It steals your awareness.
Yes.
And awareness is the oxygen of leadership. It's what fuels the blood of oxygen in leadership. That awareness is crucial. And that's why I really believe that learning and development is critical in this process.
Now, just to let the audience know, we have a lot of stuff that we want to get through. So I'm putting your comments up on here, and we'll respond as we're able to. But I want to make sure we cover a lot of this stuff because, wow, this is really, really impactful stuff, Joe.
Thank you. And I know that for those that couldn't make it, maybe they'll watch the replay and grab one or two items that add value to you, because everyone's situation is unique. The one thing that isn't unique, that as leaders, we will reach our existing level of our existing playbook. We'll reach that ceiling. How do you plan on breaking through? That's right. Critical learning and development strategy.
Well, that's what just charged me before. You know, if they're struggling with just executing on process, we're not even getting to the sweet part, which is beyond there.
We often are, you and I talked beforehand about a couple of comments on LinkedIn, and you know why certain businesses are struggling, because they're a leader, and that leader knows how to read a P&L, right? They know how to look at a financial statement, but do they know what it takes to take that person, that individual, and develop them further so what they're contributing is adding to that financial statement rather than the other way around? The financial statement becomes the byproduct of great learning and development and coaching. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through this outline with the people on this version.
I just want to respond to Kenny. He says 3 hours is a long time to sit and listen, though. You're 100% right, but they're not sitting and listening. I'm just there to facilitate the conversation that they are going to have going forward, because I'm in the store for a limited number of hours. They're in the store 50 plus weeks a year. So I'm there to facilitate the conversation. It is not me talking at them. It is all of us in the room putting our heads together and coming up with, talking about challenges and coming up with ways to overcome some of those challenges and get better at what they're doing. Because look, I'm not going in there to tell them what to do. I'm going in there to find out what they're doing, see where they're struggling, and have them come to the point where they develop their own answers. I'm just guiding them through self-discovery, because me telling them to do it isn't going to matter. Just like when you go in store, Joe, getting them to that aha moment and realizing what it is they need to do, that's where real change happens. I was telling you about, the meeting before where, at the end, I look for a couple of things that we can take action on in the next 30 to 45 days. And the COO of a medium-sized dealer group had a big smile on his face, turned the laptop to me and pointed. He said, I've already acted on 2 of the things that we talked about here. Right? I mean, that's stronger than garlic. That's the moment we live for.
So I'm going to challenge whoever said 3 hours is a long time. If you're talking about operating a multi-million-dollar business, is 3 hours too much time? Now, let's put this on a different way. We're talking about education. My wife's a teacher, right?
Yeah.
She goes off-site and they spend an entire 8 hours learning different ways. And whether you've been a teacher for 5 years, 5 months, 15 years, you're still getting the education level for your classwork. The concept behind that is, how do we take and analyze, ask better questions, and get the better experience for the student? So next, I think we really, I use this quote often, and I'm proud of it. Leadership isn't about changing an opinion. Leadership is about changing behaviors. When you change the behavior, you change the person. Yeah. And that is what this process is all about. And it's very structured in an environment where we can teach. I know one of the topics we're going to talk about next is the power of practice. Yeah. Purposeful practice and why it matters. Sorry, I led my own segue, but it's
the
critical.
Question then is, what's the difference between doing your job and practicing leadership?
Thank you. It's a great question, and I'm going to state it this way. The way through compression isn't harder work. That's the cost of entry. It's purposeful practice. Repetition makes you efficient, but practice makes you proficient. So think about it this way. If you're a musician, I can practice and I can have that repetition, but when do I become proficient where I can play the music without any, music, right? Without the scripted music. Yeah. I can play it by ear. So for a writer, for a teacher, one of the things that's so important for me is not only do I look at that practice and that proficiency, but it's constant learning and development. The difference is how you receive feedback. So I want to use a psychologist, Anders Ericsson. If you haven't read his research, I'm going to really recommend you do it, because his book on mastery revealed this. The world's best performers, from surgeons to concert violinists to just the best performers, they don't repeat what they already know. They reflect, they refine it further, and then they receive feedback. Whether it's through the audience or through their co-parts, they receive constant feedback. His study of performance is what is referenced as the craftsman study, meaning you're a craftsman. You're skilled at the detail of your work, observing, adjusting, and improving just one deliberate motion at a time. That's Anders Ericsson's research. I want to go one step further, if you will. There's a great book called So Good They Can't Ignore You. It's awesome. He recalls this same craftsman mindset. And he said, it's the belief that excellence isn't found by chasing passion. It's built by pursuing precision. And so my passion is learning and development and coaching and helping people. That precision is constant coursework. You and I talked about, hey, when do you find downtime? Yeah. Downtime. It's those hours in between that add so much content to it. So think about it this way. It's like being an artisan. You're focused, you're intentional, you are show up to do that same task, but not to finish it faster, but to do it better. Like imagine playing a song as a pianist and trying to play it faster, assuming the sound will be better. That pianist isn't playing for speed, they're playing for precision.
Right.
Mostly stall, right? We stall. We get confused between, hey, I'm experienced or I'm an expert, right? And I don't even love the word expert because I believe people always have a different layer of potential.
Correct.
But it's what they repeat instead of what they refine, I guess is another way of putting that.
So I want to go back to Dave Floyd's comment here because I think there's a giant gold nugget in there. And Dave says, development days should be mandatory for everyone in the dealership. Okay.
Amen. Right on.
Any dealer principals that see this, whether now or on the replay, that is an incredible statement right there because it should be mandatory. And to your point about people that play an instrument, they practice, right? Leadership is an interesting thing because different people approach it different ways. I've seen some really great leaders over the years, and I've seen some people that really should not have been in leadership position. But what I find is interesting, just like the person that can play an instrument, just kind of pick up the instrument and play it, right? Without necessarily having done all of the practicing that somebody else might need to do and still play it beautifully. I've seen leaders step into roles in companies that they are not necessarily part of, but because they understand the concepts so well, they're able to, almost like that musician that's able to play that instrument without reading the music. Have you seen that?
Yes. So think about it this way. Athletes have performance coaches at every level. Surgeons, they have peer review boards. They have coaches. Pilots have flight instructors. One of our friends, my wife's and I friends, he's a pilot for not American. Gosh, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank right now. Alaska. He's a pilot for Alaskan Airlines. And they are required, check this out, required something like 90 some hours of pilot retraining. Now, he's been a pilot for years, and they go to the simulation course, and they spend 3 days here going through all these simulations, getting coached, right? And then they have to go back every so many. So it's so many hours that they have to get coached. Think about a professional musician. They have conductors. Every field that demands precision requires practice under pressure and feedback in real time. Leadership, it's no different. It's not in a role you hold, but it's in the craft that you hone.
So you touched on this a little bit, and I joked with you when you said, in your spare time, I joked a little bit because I don't feel that I have spare time, although at the same time, I feel like I'm off all the time because I love what I do so much. And I am filling my days and my gaps with learning and education, just as you do, because that's just, I think, what drives us. But what can you say? What are ways leaders can deliberately practice when their calendar is full, right? Because it's easy to say, I'm booked up and shut yourself off.
Yes, 100%. It's easy to say, I don't have time. So I was working with a store and we were talking about one-on-ones. I don't have time for that. And I tried to pivot back, and here's where we came as a result. If you don't have time today to invest in yourself, in your team, think about the gradual cause and effect of 30 days from now, 45 days from now, 6 months from now. Real feedback, real one-on-one learning goes way beyond just sitting in a classroom attending NADA. I'm a proud NADA graduate as well, Academy graduate. But one of the things that I think every leader can do, time block. If it's an hour a week to strategize, to sit and talk about the development of themselves and their team. See, coaching doesn't require 8 hours of work, but it does require very strategic time, just like any other musician, athlete, etc. Efficiency is you're repeating what you already know, but practice expands who you are, who you're becoming, what your team looks like. When I said earlier, my wife has an academic coach, right? Athletes have all these other performance coaches. Think about that environment. That precision requires certain level of reflection.
Killer stuff, Joe. Killer stuff, man.
Thank you. I'm so very proud of the product that we're going to deliver for everyone. And I think we have a couple of really important topics we'll cover in this. I think we're going to get to most of them. So let's keep it rolling.
Just a couple acknowledgments here. Kenneth Dunner Jr. is great. He's invited people to come. And Jeffrey says, this is great. Paul and Joseph, he's a friend of Kenny that he brought him on here. And Lamont Harris, have not seen him in a little while. Good evening, guys. Been a while. Lamont. Please know my love and respect remain the same. Respect to both of you. Keep pounding.
Thank you, sir.
Let's see here. So tell us, what does your team feel when you stall? Because sometimes you stall.
Yep. Your team feels that you hit your ceiling. And what happens is, I call it emotional contagion. And that research shows that when your energy, positive or negative, spreads faster than your words. When the leader stops learning, teams stop believing. When a leader grows, when they continue to evolve, the team rises with them. It's kind of like a tide. The further the tide gets, the further away from the mission you become. And so what happens for most leaders, and by the way, just bringing up this point, turnover at, I think it's 45% for managers, 46% for service managers. The turnover occurs when we take talent, we put them at a level they're currently capable of, we reach that ceiling and stall. And then we're chasing the same thing repeatedly. And the person above us is saying, we've stalled, we're not growing. Let me get in the new seat. Let me put someone in behind you. And that's where this whole structure of when your team stalls, it all just crumbles. And then we look for blame, right? Then we got to find a scapegoat.
Is that the science of the 90-day wonder?
In theory, yes. In practice, no, because in theory, you reach that level of your current playbook. In practice, what happens is we're chasing the wrong things. We're chasing the byproduct. So you said, for example, I'm a process person. Most new managers don't even know what their existing process is, only what they've learned through osmosis, only what got them to that level. And so when a dealer says, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, but when a dealer says, well, I don't want to invest in training, Paul's just going to leave or I'm going to fire him. The challenge with that is you're asking someone to manage, to be the face of your business in the service drive with hundreds of customers, some cases, thousands of customers in a day, right? Or in a month. That interface, and you're allowing them to reach their current playbook level. What happens is people stall because they get exasperated. I can't go beyond this level. And the only thing that my boss is trying to do is drive more revenue, drive more revenue, drive more revenue. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what changes will help me pivot. That's why this learning and development course is so pivotal for new learners.
What are some subtle cues that your team picks up when you're stuck?
The way through compression isn't more force, it's learning. So I want to point out Carol Dweck. Everyone knows growth mindset, fixed mindset. Everybody knows the analogy. But if you haven't read the book, her research on a growth mindset proves it. Capacity expands when you believe it can. Growth mindset is, I don't know that yet, Paul, but I can learn it. A fixed mindset is, I'm only going to go this far because this is the only thing I believe in. I'm not going to do more because I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it, and I don't know that it's going to be effective. See, in today's environment, that's what happens with coaching. People feel it as a gimmicky thing, as something that is presented in a way that's just too cost effective. But the reality is, if you could change the culture, you can reduce your retention or increase your retention, and at the same time build all those blocks that you measure every day. That it means that it's working when you can break that curve, because transformation isn't comfortable, it's meaningful, it's relational. And it's a little bit disoriented because remember, I'm playing to my current playbook, right?
Right.
If it doesn't disorient you, it's not transformation. So let's add one more piece to that. In neuroscience, neuroplasticity happens when we learn something we couldn't do before. It builds new neurons and they connect new neurons together, neuroplasticity. And it means that our brain can literally expand. Imagine that. I just read a book, if you haven't read it, it's by Dan Brown. It's about 700 pages long, and it's really about those sciences. Now, I bring that up only for a reason, because now you're expanding your level of depth and neural connections beyond your current framework. He uses words there, Paul, that I had to literally Google on my phone. I'm like, I don't even know what that word is. What is that word? So I had to Google it and write it down. That's where your neurons are making more connections.
And that's where true growth occurs.
Absolutely. When you think about a professional environment, again, I'll use my beautiful wife as an example. Teachers have professional learning cultures and communities where they kind of learn together, right? They have cohorts. They have a classwork that they do together. They go off site. In leaderships, we send a manager to a one-day course. We send a parts manager off to learn how to get her obsolescence down. But we don't teach the impact of leading everyone else in the department. Let's go one step further. Your GM or your boss comes back from a 20 group with phenomenal ideas, and what happens? We want to scrap everything and expect everybody to deliver on this new idea. It's great. It's a great idea. It's stretching you, but we haven't provided foundation.
Right. And you know, that tends to be a repeating cycle. Comes back, here are the 20 things new that we're going to start tomorrow, and they don't act on it because they don't reinforce it. And after the next 20 group meeting, we're back to the next thing again.
So remember, leadership isn't about changing your opinion. So I was at a partner and I was discussing with them because they're like, well, they know better. They know better. They know better. I said, listen, the point is when you make that statement to that person, they're agreeing with you. You've changed their opinion. But when you leave, you haven't changed their behavior. So what happens? We work to the level of our current playbook. We aren't learning new things.
We bounce back.
Right. We bounce back to what becomes our norms.
Yeah.
So at that partner, what I was saying to the leader is that even you will go back to the things that are most comfortable, even though they're not producing the results you want.
Because it's what we know.
It's what we know, right? So we have to start thinking about learning and development and coaching strategies that go beyond that. So, you know, oftentimes we'll present to a leader our learning and development and what it's designed for, what it's created for, and why. And oftentimes we'll get the idea, well, what we're doing is good enough. Now, they won't literally say that, but that's the value sentiment. Or it might be, I don't want to invest in Paul. What if Paul leaves? Then I got to start all over again. Well, what if you invest in Paul and all of a sudden you raise the playbook level? So Paul's whole team rises with that tide. And guess what Paul does? Paul becomes more engaged, more enthusiastic, more learned, more involved in that environment.
Contagious.
It's contagious. And instead
People follow it.
the opposite, we look at reasons why we shouldn't, or we fluff it off rather than investing in that. Yet we'll spend, I use this analogy all the time. We might spend, thousands and thousands of dollars to get people in the door, but we haven't taught our team how to behave. And by behave, I mean behaviors, process when they arrive. We teach our team members to handle friction at its surface and nothing deeper.
So, maxed out. How do we push past the maxed out? Because a lot of times I will speak with managers that tell me I'm maxed out.
We need the same mastery lab, if you will, a space where leaders can practice in real time, where they can test new ideas, where they can receive feedback before the stakes get too high, before we are in an environment where it becomes destructive. Remember, learning in and of itself is uncomfortable. It's disorienting. But when you stack them, right? When you're able to stack that, you start building that behavior change. That tolerance level becomes stronger. And more importantly, the science is the neural connections start to build. And we're literally expanding our mind. There's a couple of cues I can provide the audience here that you can literally write down and take with you. Just real activating shifts that are intentional, that whoever is listening or perhaps is on here tonight could actually put into place. So I'm going to give you 3, Paul, that will change because they're intentional. So here's number 1. Turn a one-on-one from a review performance-wise into a growth conversation. Change that framework. End one meeting. Number 2, end one meeting with a reflective question instead of a checklist. How many meetings are you in? Where we go, check, check, check. You got that? Check. So instead, end it with a reflective question. I love Socratic questions because they unlock the mental file cabinets that are stored away in your brain. And I use that analogy in a lot of my coaching and development. The third thing you can do right away, and Paul, we can add these into the chat or something. Recognize one behavior instead of one number. So for example, we might say, hey, Paul, you hit your, you maxed out your pay plan. Good job. Instead, we might recognize a behavior. Paul, by the way, helping in the service drive this morning, you expedited 7 vehicles through this process simply by helping us pull a car around the back or simply greeting the client in time. You helped us develop an experience that they wanted. Remember what we are in. We're in a business of experience. That's so imperative here. And our mission at Traver Connect is experience matters. Yours, theirs, ours. That's for a reason, right? We want the whole experience to matter. So I would say to you, number 3, recognize one behavior instead of a number.
And I love the way you put it, because it's all in the framing. Okay. When I talk about bringing a new employee on and walking them through how you're going to support them, okay, over the next 30, 60, 90, 120 days, here's where you are now. Here's your proficiency level. Over the next 30, 60, 90, 120, my goal is to get you to this level because our customers expect a certain level of customer experience, okay? And I'm going to check in with you. And at the 60-day point, if I didn't get them there, here's framing again. It's not, why didn't you get there? I reframe it as in, we're at the 60-day point. I was hoping to get you to this proficiency. How can I better support you? Because I'm a little bit behind.
Yes, when we put it in the framework of what we would like to achieve, we create, here's the key, we create the behaviors that allow us to get there.
Yes.
Instead of changing the opinion, hey, Paul, you're right. I should have done better last month. I only, my PNVR is this, or my sales were this, or my sales volume were, 80,000, and you set a budget for 110. So yeah, Paul, I needed to do better. Okay, I just agreed with you, but have you changed anything?
Nothing.
So the framework is turned one-on-one from a review into a growth conversation.
Yeah.
Here's the key. Small shifts practiced with purpose become breakthroughs.
Yeah.
Small shifts done with practice in purpose become breakthroughs.
People would be amazed how much progress they can make by only improving by 10%. I want to get to Steve's comment here. Steve Apicella, gravitating to like-minded people is natural. Listening to different-minded people can be challenging. Finding inspiration beyond your expertise is growth. Experts many times have a hard time seeing beyond what they expertly know.
Yes. And the reality of that is that expert has a fixed mindset, meaning, yes, I can learn this, I choose not to. In other words, being open to a brand new perspective that, so again, we'll go right back to our topic offline, AI. It's created so much fear in the marketplace, when in reality, there should be this embracing of that technology, but people are fearful because it's new. They're fearful for what it can or cannot do. There's this supposition that it could be the end all be all, solve every problem in the world. Just isn't going to be that way in this environment. Where we are stuck in the automotive world is we live transactionally instead of transformationally.
Especially in an environment where it's so competitive now.
Yes. And you know what we chase? We chase the competitor, right? We're competing against our competition rather than competing against ourselves to improve, to get better. Athletes do it one motion at a time, right? Think about it this way. If you're an athlete, you focus one motion at a time. If you're a pianist, in my example, right? You practice one key at a time. You practice flow and then that precision. So don't underestimate the value of the compound effect. Great book, by the way, if you haven't read it, it's awesome. Of one consistent intention. That's the key.
Why coaching matters.
No one sees their own blind spots, right? That's why elite performers, regardless of their profession, have coaches. Brene Brown writes about it in her brand new book. I never met the woman. I've read almost every book she's written, but she's emphasized that. Gallup wrote a whole book on not being a manager, but being a coach, an entire book about it in today's environment. We're going to coach to our ceiling. So you need someone externally to help you get past your current playbook. It's not because you're weak, but they are committed. Those people are committed to staying sharp. They're committed to learning anew. They have that growth mindset, right? Coaching never exposes a flaw. It just accelerates your evolution, your learning, your environment. Remember, leadership is not about changing your opinion. It's about changing your behavior. When you change the behavior, all of a sudden you've changed the whole person.
Yeah.
Albert Bandura did a little bit of research. I made a note for myself to mention this, but he did research on modeling behaviors that remind us that growth is contagious when it's demonstrated from the very top. So think about in coaching. I'm a Washington Commanders Redskin fan, lifelong. They won today, tough win. But Dan Quinn, who's the head coach, gets coaching. Imagine that. He's got experts who he leans on to coach him through coaching. This is a top level performer at an NFL franchise who leans on coaching. Imagine that. Yet in a auto dealership environment, we don't have space for that. We don't have time. We don't have, our opinion is fixed about that as a reference. So when leaders get coached, they give everybody else permission to grow with them.
I'm a big one for tracking what you do, because we can affect positive change or growth in anything that we can track. And I've got an interesting thing here from the ICF Global Coaching Study that shows 86% of companies report a positive ROI on coaching, with benefits including improved leadership effectiveness, confidence, and team alignment.
Yes. Read Gallup's book, all about not being a leader, being a coach. And throughout that entire book, they talk about managers have to change the way they lead today. Remember, we have 4 generations in the marketplace today, first time ever. Now it might be 5, but I know it is 4 in the same workforce. And we've got a neurodivergent workforce that most leaders don't even know how to adapt to. So we've
Every
got
day we talk about this.
changing culture, right? And
Yep.
then we have this transaction-based relationship. Listen, the auto world has been built historically on transactions, and there's
Yes.
okay with that. However, there's also a cultural shift saying we can shift to experience. Like I mentioned to you when you and I were talking, I saw 3 or 4 dealers post something to the extent of, we're transactional, we have to transfer to transformation, creating experience. They're behind the curve right now.
And it's not new. It's not
Yes.
a new concept.
Exactly. If you think about culture, culture is what lays the foundation. It's the lifeblood. And I talked about that 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years, and I've been talking about it because it's so important. So when we think about it, as a leader, you got a ceiling, right? This is the extent of your current playbook. What coaching and developing, learning and developing and coaching does is allow you to expand using your own brain, right? It allows you to use your own tools to expand. It allows you to access that mental file cabinet that has all the data stored away that you don't know how to access. When you think about this, the compression curve is just that. We reach a point in life where we are maxed out on our current capability. Now,
I think a lot of that is self-imposed also, because we just don't know any better.
Right, 100%. Wherever you are in this race, wherever you are on it, you got to remember this: growth isn't a sprint. We're not running a sprint, it's structure. I wrote a post this morning about scaffolding, right? Because that's vital in today's world. What is the scaffolding? So teachers are taught scaffolding, easy for me to say, learning, right? Building the scaffolds for their students. It's not what you know, it's how you act and how you know what you know, right? It's what you practice with consistency. I said it earlier, change the behavior, you change the leader. Change the leader, you change the culture. Change the culture, you change everything with it. That's the value of learning and development. That's this leadership compression curve.
Joe, I believe we've gotten through what we wanted to get through today, man.
We did. Thank you. And so listen, for those of you who want to keep growing, those of you that want to deepen this further, DM me. We can introduce you to our leadership compression curve webinar, the science behind it, how capacity is built, how compression is reduced. We have a 3-day immersion course. We have a 45-minute course. And then we have our coaching strategy that goes to the next level. So please DM me on LinkedIn. Sorry for the infomercial, Paul, but I think our learning development strategy can help so many people that are stuck in this current leadership curve.
It's valuable.
And
there's a need for it. And you know what? We talked about it today, but there's so many people that don't even realize that there's a need for it. Hopefully we opened a couple of eyes today.
I sure hope so. It was delivered with the passion and the care that I have for humans, for other people. And I trust that the value we provided today is just a baseline for creating the next level. So I'm so grateful for you having me. I'm grateful for the people that joined, even if they didn't comment or add. I'm just grateful we're able to at least provide some value. So thank you, Paul.
Thanks for being part of the series, Joe. I appreciate it, man.
It is my pleasure. Thank you.
So thank you, everybody who tuned in, and thank you to those that are catching this on the replay. And I wish you a safe and successful next week. And you'll look out for the post for the next show that's coming up. Joe, stay on after we log off here.
Yep.
Have a good night.